But in addition to that, we administer the historic district of Georgetown. Georgetown, you know, it's really the oldest neighborhood within Washington D.C. It goes back well to the 1750s, but really gets going as a part of the city after it's determined that the capital will move here in the 1790s. We're in an interesting house right now, which really helps demonstrate the many layers of history that comprise the Georgetown built environment. We're on a kind of a neighborhood that was a little bit on the edge. It was very near Rock Creek Park, in an area that really was used for a lot of time as sort of the town dump. So we're in a kind of in a slope, what was originally a sloped area going down to a valley where there was a lot of agriculture and light industry. Sort of on the edge of things, we've got Bridge Street, which is now M Street, which is just a block or so away. This is an area, one of the older areas of the city. What's interesting, and you might look around, we're actually standing in a low level, way down, a few feet below what we think was probably the original floor level of this house. Pick it up and look, pick it all the way up to look. You can see we're low, there's a basement level. The deck you see is really the first level at the street, and then there's another level above that. What's interesting about this property is, again, that's the layers of history that we're seeing. Thing here now at the back side looking, this is going to be going downhill originally, the lay of the land downhill behind me, but we go up to about where my head is, and that's about the level of an addition that was, well, the original house probably came up a wing to here, and then an addition that was actually built in the 70s by a notable local architect, Hugh Newell Jacobson. So that's this piece that sticks out with these two stone piers going all the way up, the great window wall looking to the south. So, but what's fascinating in this story is that we start very low here and it just keeps going up. If you look over here on this side wall, you can see mud and roots coming through, but if you look carefully, you can tell there are arched window openings here that have been filled in. Now, at the time that Mr. Veevers-Carter bought the house, this was just a crawl space underneath, and the slab level was somewhere in here. Is that correct? Somewhere around in here? Actually, at the level of that pipe. Above, the windows that you see above are actually what is now considered a basement level from the street. But clearly there was another level here that was occupied lower, all the way down, and it shows that there's this evolution of the topographic history of this part of the city where there were a lot of land was raised slowly over time, and now there's a park, Rose Park, overlooking Rock Creek, which is almost like a bluff. But the sense is that it was used to be a much more gradual decline. This area was used for dumping, etc., and it sort of filled in over time. Moving over to, this is the street side. The street level is actually way up at the level of that new framing that you see. The windows and the door are actually in a kind of what's called an area way, a little sort of dropped zone about 7-8 feet below the street level. Sometime, we think probably in the early 20th century, the street was raised up, which made what had been the ground level into a basement. Again, there had been a basement below that, and who knows what's even further down. And if you come over here, kind of fascinating to look at these openings, which there was a cellar down here, but we're actually, the floor level of the cellar was about at the level of those the tops of those openings. So again, that means that there was probably a cellar level below the cellar level. So it's been a kind of, we're actually sort of now we're looking at maybe 2 levels up, where the house is sort of keeps growing vertically, and it keeps being built on one layer on top of the other over this 200 year period. We're not clear what we're looking at here. This is nice stonework from quarried and a little bit dressed. It's hard to tell, but it could be from the early 19th century, possibly, we don't know, even from the late 18th century. It's possible that because we're so low now here, we're getting closer down to the level of Rock Creek, which was at the time a little bit, there was a lot of commercial activity. There was definitely shallow draft shipping vessels, small, but things that came up the Rock Creek area, up, they say, about as far as P Street. So it's possible that there was some building here that could have been associated with some of the river, the sort of port activity. We're a little bit far to the northwest of the river, the creek bed. But if it was a lower terrain, you could see how it's maybe a block from here. So it's possible there was some commercial activity going on. In any case, it's not clear, but it'd be interesting to get somebody to really look carefully at the stone in order to find out exactly how old it is. And you can probably date it pretty well in the composition of the mortar. Anyway, it's a fascinating thing. We're seeing, here we are in the 21st century. We're seeing another chapter where not only they're not so much going up now, but they're actually going back down into the earth. And Mr. Veevers-Carter has just described how, as they excavated down this back part, they had to clear out a lot of fill that was very full of all sorts of crazy stuff, ash, bottles, lots of stuff that you might associate with that kind of history as a dump, until they got the level that we're standing on now is really down to what is probably undisturbed soil, down 20 feet below the street level. So we're going to go upstairs now and look at the house from that level, which is now the street level, which would have been, who knows, whether it was a third level, it didn't exist at the time of this original construction. But we'll go upstairs and look. Okay, so here we are. We're actually now at essentially the street level. But as you can see, we're 20 feet above or more above where we were. This house, the records show that this house was built somewhere in the mid-1860s. It's a frame house as opposed to the masonry building that was underneath, and that this was basically built on top of. It was you can see, if you look up, you can see that it was a gable parallel to the street, and then a wing here that had to go, extends to the back. There would have been foundation walls that connected down to the ground, and then there was, I believe, a stair over, kind of over here, and then it would have been open to the sky against the neighboring wall, which is now being filled in, so that they're going to take this whole space. But it's interesting to look at this mid-19th century or slightly later century construction. We've got very thick timber studs. You can see them. This is very typical kind of construction. These are sort of 3-inch studs. But it's done on a platform. It's built story by story, as opposed to something that was called balloon framing, where they would go up 2 stories and then fill in the floor. You can see how that's been stacked. What you're looking at is the back side. This is actually the exterior siding, which is exposed. There's nothing in between, but that's actually the outside cladding, which is a German lap siding, which looks like this, with this little reveal, so they overlap. And the owner is now looking at perhaps cleaning some of that up. But you can see, you can see this is a common wall with the adjacent property. And here you can see how the floor framing from the adjacent house actually tooths in to this common wall. So there's a lot of clues in what's left of the house in terms of how it was originally constructed. You can see the remnant of an old roof line that's in against that brick. You can see a window that got bricked in that used to open onto that light court. And then, of course, as we move around, you can see the steel structure that was part of that 1970s work that was undertaken by the owners with Hugh Jacobson. So it's a very rich history and a kind of a nice opportunity to look at it right now while it's open to see what story it tells, and because it'll all get covered up and we won't be able to see it until the next time somebody undertakes such a big renovation. So it's a really interesting property and an interesting part of the Georgetown Historic District.